Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we are finally going to be talking about the newest album from Kings of Leon, called Walls. Oh boy, there's a reason I wanted to do the Blackberry Smoke review before this one, mostly as an active disclaimer for those who will say that I can't like or appreciate Southern or alternative rock because I'm not that much of a Kings of Leon fan. Whereas the reality in Southern rock with Blackberry Smoke is that they transcended the worst tropes of their genre while embracing the best. Whereas Kings of Leon within Southern rock, they're one of those bands that seems to have gotten a pass from the mainstream public for entirely too long based off of one good song, that being You Somebody. And yeah, You Somebody is a very good song, probably even a great one, but having now listened to the entire Kings of Leon discography, trust me when I say that they don't have that many more good songs. Part of this is that they can tend to fall towards the bad side of Southern rock tropes when it comes to a lot of the lyrics and songwriting, namely the majority of songs they've ever written about women, and yet they don't play the sleaze with the swagger or bravado or even a sense of humor to make that all that tolerable. They instead opt to be very earnest about it, and that's not a good thing. And that's part of the larger problem with Kings of Leon in that they don't really have a distinct identity or intensity as a band. They aren't grounded in roots rock or country to fully embrace Southern rock. They aren't rough-edged enough for punk or hard rock, and I was never really all that impressed by their guitar work to put them up with the anthemic strains of arena rock or progressive rock like U2 or Muse. Couple that with vocals that could be very hit and miss, especially on their earliest albums, their complete sincerity, which made their lyrics seem at best tonally inconsistent and at worst horribly self-obsessed, and their bizarre inability to end a lot of their songs properly, and you find a rock band that's really too watered down for me to really care about. I wanted to like Kings of Leon a lot more before going into their discography, but I just don't. Now, to be at least a little fair to these guys, there are ingredients of a good band here, especially in a lot of the bass lines and some of the more fast-paced, blurry guitar tones. I can see some of the U2 inspiration there. And their 2013 album, Mechanical Bull, was not bad, mostly courtesy of some tighter melodies and a slightly better grasp of melodic songwriting with some Southern rock textures. But a lot of people I otherwise respect were giving their newest album, Walls, a fair amount of praise. And while I didn't really have high expectations going into this, it couldn't be that bad, right? Well, yeah, it's not bad, but it's also not good either. In fact, I'm having a hard time describing what this record is at all, because I got very little, if anything, out of Walls by Kings of Leon. For as many times as I listened through it, this record feels like a real blur to me. None of the recognizable bite or texture that saved Mechanical Bull, no performances that felt fiery or explosive, and lyrics that couldn't coalesce into a coherent theme beyond Kings of Leon's standards even if they tried. I would call this formless and generic, but a better word are aimless or lost. A record from a band so deeply and seriously committed to a path that just seems to lead nowhere. I only have so much patience to go along with this journey, so yeah, I kind of get why people like this band, but I certainly don't. So let's start off with the biggest issue right out of the gate with this album, the production. For the first time in their careers, Kings of Leon have made a record without Angelo Petraglia, instead opting for Marcus Drops, who's most well known for his work with Coldplay, Mumford & Sons, Arcade Fire, and most recently the last Florence and the Machine record that only really had one song I liked. And with that choice comes a complete absence of any electric guitar bite or firepower, instead dragged into smooth, liquid tones that might carry melody but have no real body in the tone to support it, leaving the bass guitar to carry all the weight. And sure, that means a greater focus on the bass grooves, which have always been a consistent strength of Kings of Leon in the past. But when you then sink most of the drums into the same blur of it all, it doesn't make for a mix with that much punch, even on the songs with more wiry melody coming through. And when you throw in layers of flat, buzzy synths and arranged instrumentation to further mute that impact, I'm left without a lot of interesting texture or explosive hooks to really rely upon. And for a band trying to be as anthemic as Kings of Leon are, that's a huge misstep. And keep in mind, Kings of Leon, they aren't a band that will break into a huge impressive solo to showcase their flair or style, which means that whenever we do get an instrumental interlude, it doesn't really evolve or change all that much or go off into a direction that's weird or interesting. And that's not even counting the hooks that have some potential to explode and yet just don't, and just a blurry mess with no real impact, waste a moment, conversation piece, or the songs where the melodic balance on the hook is just skewed to neuter any possible impact, like that oscillating guitar piece on Reverend, or the shrill pileup of tones on Wild that can't remotely live up to a decent electric guitar flourish in the mid-range at the core, especially on the hook. Now, that's not saying the band doesn't experiment a bit, but most of those experiments are misfires. fire. Around the World tries to go for some indie rock inspired bounce off the prominent bass and main guitar that drops it down to a more conventional blurry hook that doesn't really flatter the verses or the vocals before fading in and out of reverb. It's a song that's trying to be a lot cooler than it really is. Then there's Muchacho with its drippy electronic beat, the liquid guitar and bass, the acoustic groove, and a stab at Spanish tones with the percussion. It feels way too soggy and limp to remotely work for me. Probably the worst song here. And that's also not saying that there aren't some hooks that do work here, because there are. Find Me's probably the best of them. It overfares pretty well with the grinding post-punk bass line and the bleak tones. Almost like a mainstream version of a preoccupation song, at least until the acoustic guitar comes in. But then we have our frontman, Caleb Followill, and I gotta admit, I'm still divided on this guy. On the one hand, he can be an emotive and powerful singer when he enunciates on songs like the title track, but I can't be the only one who feels that he toned back his delivery to match the more liquid tones across this album, because he's nowhere near as passionate or raw as he has been in the past. I don't doubt that he's trying, but this is where Drops' production really does him a disservice, placing the main vocal line midway into the mix. It leaves him stuck competing with a blend of synth and guitar at his volume and a louder rhythm guitar. And again, this doesn't help the album pick up any sort of soaring or anthemic presence. Even if his backing vocals do sound pretty good, there are some decent harmonies there. Of course, the more I went through the lyrics on this album, the more I just questioned whether or not these songs were worthy of anthems to begin with, mostly because of a real lack of payoff or defining detail. Now, that's not saying that there isn't detail, but it's peripheral and doesn't really inform the songs beyond trying to add texture to mixes that don't have any. Waste a Moment, prime example. The girl is your stereotypical hellraiser that populates way too many Kings of Leon songs. Her boyfriend is an outlaw straight shooter, but beyond just setting up these characters, the song tells no story or implies any sort of real motivation to go forward beyond just live fast and die hard. All planning, no real payoff. Conversation Piece is your love-hate anthem to LA, but the conversation piece line of the hook for this unspecified person feels kind of disconnected, unless that conversation about how much LA sucks, and really, Kings of Leon aren't doing that good of a job selling it. Wild even goes more abstract, but outside of not remotely living up to the title instrumentally, there's no core to the emotional dynamic of this track. It speaks about insanity, but I don't get sucked into it. Muchacho at least feels authentic in its tribute to some unspecified male friend, even if I definitely question placing it right after Over, a song about committing suicide that's got some punch to it, even when you realize that Young the Giant did this better with cough syrup 5 years ago. Then there's Reverend, a song that's trying to be a tribute to country artist Blaze Foley, at least for the first verse, before the second seems to focus on the slippery nature of what he sang about, which of course is characterized as feminine, because of course Kings of Leon does that, and how it meant so much to our protagonist here. And sure, that could drive an interesting song if we got hints of what that truth actually was, or deeper references to Foley's music, but Kings of Leon's stubborn insistence in keeping things so oblique makes it all just come across as all the more navel-gazing. And you know, that doesn't even surprise me at this point. Between that and the music about all sorts of mysterious female figures like on Find Me and All Around the World, or the wild hookup of Eyes on You, that at least feels kind of honest until you get lines like, if you don't like it, then try it, or the implications that he's trying to drive whatever ex is still lurking out of her mind with her back in his knife, which is just sloppily written, doesn't come out all that well. And then you get the sour lyrics of the break up on the title track like, I could never point you out, waste of space in a faceless crowd, or the phony self-deprecation of, oh, a man ain't a man unless he has desire. With all of this, keep in mind we're very much in still standard Kings of Leon territory, most of which I don't like. But in a sense, that's a larger problem here. I get going back to that well, but we've seen 7 albums in, and I'm seeing evidence of growth or evolution in a lot of the songwriting to drive to stronger points that could anchor the swell that's tried in some of these songs. But you know what, at the end of the day, I can't get all that mad at this album, or even feel much beyond just mild annoyance that for some reason this will get play on modern rock radio in comparison with a lot more interesting bands. Again, it's not precisely bad. There are a few good grooves, and the hooks could have been something if the production didn't squander them, but if you're gonna shamelessly milk a barely southern fusion of Interpol and U2, at least make those anthems be about something more real to match all the earnestness. I would say the lyrics soured on me the most, but that would imply I felt anything about this album beyond just overmixed, tepid boredom. I just got nothing out of this. So for me, light 5 out of 10, and I really can't recommend it. Maybe if you're a hardcore fan of Kings of Leon, but even then again, there's enough of a production shift that I can see fans of Mechanical Bull being a little bit alienated with this. But more than ever, if one of the main standard bearers for modern rock radio, if it's Kings of Leon, especially this album, I can't say that's a good sign, especially going forward. In other words, I'd probably skip this. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. I'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. I can't imagine this review will piss off any of you, but in case you have some opinions, I got the poll up there, and please leave comments. I know, I'm sorry guys, I really tried to get into this band, but I just got nothing from this. Like, I listened to all their albums, and let's be honest, there are worse records that they put out than this, but this was just real disappointing for me. I was hoping for something here. Beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. Until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.